Hi everyone, welcome to the first session of the Deathwalker's Classroom. My name is Paula and I am a third generation Deathwalker. I will be teaching and hosting these sessions. I want to start by saying that these sessions and these talks that I'm going to be giving, they're for educational and informational purposes only. It's about having a safe place where you can come and hear someone talk freely and openly about death. No judgments, no motivations, or I don't have any expectations either. We all are going to die. This beautiful body that we have been gifted to experience this human experience and to be here in this time and place, it is of this earth and it will return to this earth. So as time goes on, every one of our bodies are going to start to shut down. They're going to start doing a dying process because they have an expiration date. They can only be animated for so long, if that's the proper way to say that. So welcome in. Come on down and let's go ahead and start talking about this. It's very important that we bring community into this. And it's very important that we understand that there is celebration in birth, but there's also celebration in death. And to talk about it, to have a plan in place, is what I would consider a human right. It is about autonomy, sovereignty, dying with dignity, actually sitting and saying, this is how I see my death going. This is how I see my dying process going. These are my choices. And these conversations, of course, they should be had. It should be as normal as picking out cereal in the aisle. But unfortunately, our culture has not progressed that far. We're getting there. It's starting to happen. For me, it's happened all my life. Death was a common everyday talk in my home. We had a farm, and we had horses and cows and puppies and kitties and piglets, and some of them lived and some of them died. So for me, it was a very open and honest and completely loving experience, me growing up with being able to hear and understand and talk freely about death. So again, everybody's going to end up in the dying process. No one gets out alive in this deal, at least not yet. Oh no, it'll be long after my time, but who knows? Maybe there will be a time where, an end-of-life choice is not having an end-of-life choice at all. You can just go on and on and on and on. And that's a video and a session probably for another time. I want people to understand why this conversation can't wait. And like I said, this is a conversation we need to have. Not later, not when the time comes, not when the alarms are going off in the hallway as you're standing in the hospital room or the ER, not in crisis, not in the, not when you're, in that already stage of, oh my gosh, it's happening. It needs to happen now. The sooner the better, if that's a way to go. I want you to think about it in the terms of, have you ever today or in the past, have you ever thought about what your dying process looks like? Have you thought about what your death looks like? And when I say dying process, I don't mean from, just, I've got my will done and I've got an advance directive, but have you played the tape through? Have you thought about Alzheimer's? Have you thought about dementia? Have you thought about being so disabled that a lot of the human bioorganic body that you inhabit is just not going to perform. It's just not going to be, excuse me, it's not going to be very useful. And so and there's cancers, there's all kinds of cancers, and I could go on, but pick one or pick several and put it and play it out in your head. How does that story play out? Really and truly, how does it go through? I mean, have you thought about, let's take a cancer, for example. Have you thought about what a cancer would be? That, pick one. Would you continue treatments? Do you have someone, or let's rephrase that. Do you have a game plan for the people to be around you? And have you thought about all the things that will come after it? The side effects, maybe there's some long-term care, maybe there's some rehab. So play the tape through. What I find most people do that is really interesting is they say, yes, I've planned it. I have my trust, I have my advance directive, and I'm good to go. And I'm thinking, so that's as far as you played the tape? Did you skip the whole middle part where you actually can set up a scenario in your head where you can play it out for the best and for the worst? Because you should, and it should be something that comes easily to you. So stick around, because I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to help you to be comfortable with talking about death, any kind of death, your death, your animal's death, and how the dying process goes. So if you want, let's start with the end of life choices. Let's just start at that particular point. That's a really good place to start. So if you want your end of life choices honored, whether that includes medical aid in dying, which is MAID, which I advocate voraciously for. I really do. There's VSED, which is voluntary stoppage of eating and drinking. And I've got to tell you, this is legal, but it's not spoken very much about. And then, of course, we have the old standby that probably 80% of us just, are shuffled right off into, and that's hospice. Or simply maybe it's just refusing interventions from here on out. I'm going to say this. You must advocate for yourself long before you reach the threshold, long before you get into that terminal illness stage, or even in the late palliative care stage. Think about it now, because the truth of the matter is we are all in the queue, and you don't know when you're up next. You don't know when you're the next call. So having a plan for an end of life choice is, to me, as important as having a birthing plan when you're going to have a child. There's great planning. Maybe not in, conceiving the child, but you would think that there would be a plan in that too, but it doesn't always happen, and that's okay. But once the action has taken, once the conception has taken place, then you actually have to play the tape through, right? You have to make the plan. Why don't we do that with death as well? It's the most important and last stage that we will ever stand on. So this isn't about methods for me. This is about clarity. This is about communication. Communication is so very, very, very important. And so if you stick around and you come into my sessions, we're going to have conversations. And I'm going to make them inviting, just like this one. And I'm going to invite you to write back, put in the comments, ask your questions. Please. It would be an honor to help you. It would be an honor to bring you into the sacred threshold of conversations about death. So this is about protecting your sovereignty. And I see this all the time. And I've seen it it's growing. I see the system overrides a lot of people's end of life choices, especially if they've been rushed, if they haven't been well planned out, if they're vague, if they're just a simple open-ended response. It's so easily for them to just override it. The first question that I'm going to pose to you all is, who will stand beside you? Before you talk about any of the subjects that I just mentioned, the medical aid in dying, the hospice, or any other path, ask yourself this very, very, very important question. Who will actually stand beside me when the time comes? Just mull that over for a second or two. Did you have anyone that popped into your mind right away? Did you have several people that popped into your mind? Hold those thoughts, because now I'm going to throw in the next part of the scenario. I need you to think about not who loves you, not who means well, and not who promises. How's the list looking now? How many people are popping in your head right now? If you're like a lot of folks, the list went from this to this when I mentioned those three things. Who will honor your choices even if they don't agree? That's the person you want. You're looking for the person who will stand beside you, the dying person. This person will do everything in their power to see that your end of life choices are honored, and not only, and on top of that, they will be followed through with. So think about that. Now I'm going to throw another twist in. Something to think about. Here's a simple fact. Families are not neutral. When it comes to the dying process, when it comes to that moment of terminal illness, that point where you are now telling the family what is going on, they are not neutral. They're your family. They shouldn't be neutral. And yes, I will say this because it is an exception to the rule. Every now and then there is a family member who can be neutral. It is a personality trait, I promise you. Families come with beliefs, remember that too. They come with fears, they come with histories, and they have a lot of unspoken rules. I am not knocking having the family member with you, but it is so important, and I say this again, who will stand with you? Who's going to be beside you at the very end when they're reading that advance directive, when it's staring everyone in the face? They have to be on your side. Not anyone else's side, not their side, not the family side, not anything else. They're simply there for you. I know what you're thinking. I really do. It's tough. It's tough because you are now looking at the fact that, the list is pretty short. Maybe you don't have anyone at all. Maybe everything is wrapped into that, family, the whole being gathered around. So this is an educational, informational thing to have you step back, be the observer of your own dying process. Look at it from an outside view, if you will. Stand outside the circle. The other thing I notice is, and when one person in the family does not share the same religious or spiritual worldview, as the dying person is, the entire conversations often collapse. And it usually is the religious or the spiritual ones that really, really get tangled up. And, it's kind of like, what did they say in Ghostbusters, where you don't cross the streams? That's kind of how it is, When you get into that religious and spiritual thing, you're crossing a whole lot of streams. And a lot of times what happens is the conversation collapses, but more importantly, the dying person often gets, there's often a shutdown because the spiritual or religious part has overtaken that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let's just stay on the religion aspect for a minute or two. Religion complicates the end of life choices. And that's just a fact. That's why it is important to start now. It's important to have these conversations because it is complicated. It is a hard time. And there's hard when you if you've ever seen a woman give birth, it's a hard time. It gets messy. It's beautiful, and the outcome is amazing, but there's a little bit of work involved before you get to the amazing part. Same with death. Same with death, exactly. So religion is one of the biggest sources of conflict that I have come across in the end of life planning. And not because religion is harmful, it isn't by any means, I'm not saying that at all, but because religious beliefs are often imposed on the dying person. It's a natural thing, it's a human being thing. Most of us have been raised and brought up on some sort of religious, moral, and that's beautiful. And as time goes on, we forget that our beliefs are our beliefs. The dying person has their own beliefs, and they're the most important person in the room. They're the only person in the room that matters when it comes to their religious or spiritual beliefs and how that all falls into place for their end of life choices. One of the things that I have found, and I'll say this with the experience that I hold of over 30 plus years, some believe that suffering is sacred. And that's perfectly okay. It's a beautiful thing on some level. Some believe only God decides when it's time to go. Some believe that medical aid in dying is morally wrong. Some believe you must come to some sort of Jesus before crossing. These are all things that come into play, that I have seen to come in play over the course of my time doing this. And so I'm bringing this up so you can put it in your head, so you can get a sample, a taste of having a conversation. And this is what we're doing. I'm not here to banter or to argue or to debate. I'm here putting out information that I have collected over, like I said, 30 plus years. And when I talk about religion, I specifically say that because if your family is knitted and is so closely wrapped up into a religious factor or a spiritual factor, this is a huge, huge conversation that needs to be done long before all the things that I mentioned before. If you are religious, your death should reflect your faith. Absolutely, positively, especially for the dying person. But if you are not, no one has the right to shame or guilt or spiritually threaten you into a death that does not belong to you. Your death is yours and yours alone. It is the one last thing that you do pretty much on your own by yourself. No one goes with you. They may sit with you, but no one actually goes with you on that last ride, that last adventure, if you will. So I guess I would ask you to think of the people who would fall into these categories that I am mentioning. And then think about, how are you going to approach them? How would you talk to them? How can you have a conversation that isn't going to collapse? How are you going to bring your spiritual beliefs, your religious beliefs into your death plan? And how does that play out for everyone? And if it doesn't play out for everyone, then, what's the next thing to do? So this is your threshold. If you're the dying person, this is your threshold. This is your timing. This is your cosmology. This is your sovereignty. So treat it that way. Treat it with honor. Treat it with the respect and time that it deserves. Treat it with the communication and the dignity that your death and your dying process absolutely, positively is going to happen. One of the other things that I would like to talk about that comes up a lot when we're talking about advocating for end-of-life choices is gaslighting at the end of life. I will do more on gaslighting in another session, so I'm going to talk very, very quickly and a little bit on this one, but I had to throw it into the first session. It just felt right. Gaslighting shows up constantly at the end of life, constantly, especially when it comes to institutions. Maybe not so much with the family, although I've had several families that do that gaslighting thing, but it mostly, from my experience, has been in the institutions, the facilities, that facility type atmosphere. And it's often done by people who believe they really are helping. I mean, a lot of times when people do the gaslighting, they're really not aware of it, first of all, that it's even gaslighting. And again, that's, we'll do a longer session on that. They really do believe that they're doing it out of kindness. They're trying to help the dying person. Here's a couple things that you might hear. You're not thinking clearly. This one is the number one go-to in my experience. I can't tell you how many times I've heard them look at a dying person and say, "Oh, Susie, you're not thinking clearly. It's okay. Don't worry about it." Or the other one is, "You don't really want that, do you? No, you don't really want that." Another one that comes up is, you'll change your mind when you're a little sicker. These are meant and often said out of trying to help, but it is gaslighting, folks, and it is something to be mindful of. As a dying person, be mindful of when you hear it, and as a person who is speaking to a dying person, be mindful not to say these things. It's not your place. One of them that irks me to no end, but it's just me because I am not a strong religious person in the whole God sector. But it said, the other one that comes across a lot is, "God wouldn't want you to do that. We're doing this because we love you. We love you. We want to help you." And yes, they are. They really think they're helping you. They really think that they're doing it out of some sort of love. And so that is something to be mindful too. But there's also the deal of having to step up and saying, "Guys, this isn't working for me. This is doing me harm. This is causing me guilt. This is giving me anxiety." Especially as the dying person, you have the right to do this. You have the right to advocate and say, "This is not going to work for me." A lot of times gaslighting is a good way to silence people. A lot of times in the facilities when I hear aides or, nurses or, just regular hospital people, a lot of doctors say these things as well. So, and it's a way to regain control, and it's a way to avoid discomfort. So many doctors that I have come across, there's a discomfort about talking about end-of-life choices. That's not their gig. They want to save your life. They want to make so it's very discomforting for them, and they're not taught very much in our medical schools. We don't teach that. Again, another video. To me, it is one of the biggest threats in the end-of-life autonomy. And that's all I'm going to say on that until I do another session on that. I'm going to touch on this part too. The medical community is not neutral. Let me say that again. The medical community is not neutral. Okay? They have a motivation. They have intentions. They have protocols. People assume healthcare workers are unbiased. They're not. They're human beings just like everyone else. They have religions, they have spiritual beliefs, they have moral beliefs, and that shapes their own views. And most of them, like I said, they're there to take care of, they're there to, help in every way. But you have to be careful because they're not neutral. They work within a system that has guidelines, and again, their moral beliefs. A lot of people will have that will shape how they think about medical aid and dying, how they think about your DNR orders, how they think about you, the dying person, refusing interventions. A lot of them have their own concepts of what a good death looks like. When it comes to the doctors, remember that when you are talking to them about your plan, when you are talking to them about end-of-life choices, notice what they become uncomfortable with. Notice their body language. Notice that they're all of a sudden becoming withdrawn. And remember, this is important. It's very important for you as a dying person, for the people who are going to be around you, for you to understand and know exactly where they stand, so that when the time comes, they all have their proper place and no one is stepping over the lines. No one is going to interject their moral beliefs or anything in the direct correspondence with how you choose to plan your life. This doesn't make them bad people. Let me say that again. This doesn't make them bad people. It makes them human. And we want that. But it also means that you have to ask certain things. You have to ask, do your choices, or let me say that again. Do your beliefs conflict with my end-of-life choices? Will you honor my DNR under all circumstances in my advance directive? If something goes wrong in, let's say, surgery or something, will you respect my refusal to resuscitation? If I choose a non-hospice path, can you still support me? Do you understand that, for everything that they're putting out and helping you, you have to help yourself. You have to advocate for you. You have to ask yourself, who's going to stand beside me? Who's going to help me? Who's going to be such a good observer that they're going to observe and make sure that my end-of-life choices or the dying person's end-of-life choices are honored? And these are questions. And I will put in the notes underneath this video. I will have all this. I'll have all the questions that I've asked so that you can come back and you can actually look for them. If the answer to any of these questions, the answer to anything with your family is not a confident yes, then you need a new provider. You need a new facility. You need another person in your family that's going to step aside beside you. The other thing that I would like to talk about is when do no harm becomes a barrier. Again, this goes back to the medical community. You know, everybody takes an oath. The doctors take an oath, you know, when you get out of medical school. And so the do no harm oath is one of the most common reasons why doctors cite the refusal to support patients' choices. Most of the time, this involves a DNR. A DNR is do not resuscitate. But here's the truth, folks. Do no harm is interpreted through the provider's belief, not the patient's. So your do no harm, as far as it is being interpreted and defined, will usually not match your doctor's. Their do no harm is exactly a specific oath they take in order to keep their license, in order to, be a part of the healthcare system and just be able to see patients and help them to the best of their ability. But the do no harm is based on their beliefs, not yours. That's very, very important to remember. For some of the clinicians even, prolonging life is harm prevention. They feel that, the longer they can provide it, they're holding off the harm prevention. Some of them will tell you, or some of them may believe that refusing treatment is self-harm. Maybe they believe medical aid in dying is harm. Maybe they believe honoring a DNR feels like harm. It goes against whatever is in their moral and ethics, and it's okay. They're human beings. Just make sure what human being you have standing behind you, as far as not only being a human being, but also being a doctor. Now, I'm going to tell you from the dying person's perspective what harm often looks like. Harm often looks like being forced into treatments that they don't want, being denied autonomy, being pressured into hospice, or being told that hospice is the only plan that there is, and they don't want hospice. They're more afraid of hospice than they are of dying. Imagine that. For 1 minute. How about being spiritually shamed? That happens a lot too. This doesn't happen a great deal, but I find that it does happen in some cases. And it usually happens with the quieter, more introverted people. But they will be overridden by someone else's world view. They'll just come in and go, well, this is how I see it. And this is how. Whoa. That's causing harm. That is harm in the dying person's view. Being pressured into hospice, that's causing harm. So you have to think about, when do no harm is used to deny your choices, it becomes a barrier. It's not a protection. It really isn't. This is another thing, and it's probably going to get me kicked in, get some feedback if and when it's listened. But death doulas and death walkers like myself, we've been around for a while. Yes, we're getting notoriety right now. We're coming up in the whole, news cycle, and we've got the light on us right now. But we are not neutral either. Many assume death doulas, death walkers are spiritually neutral. But we're not. I have my cultural beliefs. I have my morals. I have my spiritual, guide that I do. But I also know several death doulas that are the exact opposite of me. And that makes it wonderful. You want to know why that makes it wonderful? Because for as many dying people that are out there, there's one of us that will fit you perfectly. And we're not neutral, but we will stand beside you and honor your wishes, not ours. because it's about you. It's not about me. Some of us come from Christian backgrounds. Some are from the New Age frameworks that, have been around for a while. Some are from hospice-centric training. And then some are MAID skeptical. And that's just how it is. And a lot of them, here's the other thing with VSED. There's not a lot of people trained to do voluntary stoppage of eating and drinking, including the death doulas and myself. I have not been trained into even being with someone who has wanted to do voluntary stoppage. And that's another thing. That's a whole nother session I'll be getting into. So there's certain things you should ask your death walker. You should ask your death doula. Can you support my choices without imposing your beliefs? Does yours and hers or theirs match up? Are you walking on the same path? Do you have the vibrations aligned? Do you have the emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, religious thing all in tune and lined up? If the answer is no, then just keep looking. There's so many of us now, and you will find someone. I absolutely believe that. I will go into that in the next session. We will actually be talking about death walkers and death doulas in the next classroom session. So that'll open up a whole new avenue there. One of the things that I want to throw up real quick. Society has a tendency that they only know and they only talk about hospice. Hospice is the number one and basically the only go-to for all 50 states in this country. And, there are now 12 states that offer medical aid in dying, and they're growing every day. I mean, we just got New York signed in, Iowa's up, Indiana's got something going. So it is growing in a lot of the terms, but hospice has been the go-to. I mean, that's what everyone just figures that everybody should just line up and march through. That's the norm, if you will. So for me, we live in a culture that treats hospice as the only acceptable end of life plan. And I get that. It's the only thing that has been used and that has been set up, and it has worked pretty well up until now. It doesn't encompass every part of the population's choices. A lot of people have just gone into hospice because there's no other way, and they accept it, and it is brutal in my opinion. I can't imagine dying and not being able to die the way I want to, and someone telling me this is the only way you got to go. Well, my spirit's broken right there. Because nothing from here on out is going to be how I wanted it. I'm going to succumb to somebody else's ending. And that is a scary thing for me. And it's a scary thing for about 30% of the population right now. So that 30% is pretty freaking important in my opinion. I think 100% of the population around the world, forget in the United States, every one of us should have ample choices when we have an end of life choice together. There are several ways to have birth. You can have a home birth. You can have a water birth. There's a C-section, of course. There's a natural birth. You can do it with an epidural. There has to be those same choices when it comes to death. Or we are missing a certain part of the population. We are telling a certain part of the population that they don't matter. Anything outside of hospice is avoided, it's judged, it's misunderstood, it's pathologized, or it's whispered about. We have these little conversations in small little rooms, in private chat rooms. People email me all the time. This is not death literacy, folks. This is cultural conditioning. And it has to change. We have to be able to have death literacy. We have to. When hospice is the only guide that we have, when it's the only path that we're being told, it leaves thousands of people without a path that reflects their values, their wants, their desires, their sovereignty, their autonomy. How about their dignity? How about just their basic human right? The dying person is the most important person in the room. Let me say that again. The dying person is the most important person in the room. This should not need to be said, but here we are. The dying person is center stage. This is the dying person's very last stage presence they'll have in this time and place. And it's not about the family. It's not about the pastor. It's not the doctor. It's not the nurse. It's not the system. It's the dying person. They're the star of the show. All you people, you're stagehands. Every one of the people I just said, you're all stagehands. You might get some credit somewhere down the line, but you are not the star of the show. The dying person is. It's their voice. It's their values. It's their cosmology. It's their timing. It's their sovereignty. So I go back to the question. Have you thought about it? Did you forget the question already? Most people, I'm going to close this up with this final thought. Do you know most people wait until it's too late? Oh, everybody says they'll do it. Everybody about 70% of the population still doesn't have an active death plan. They'll talk about it a little bit in themselves. They may go do a trust, but they don't ever actually file it. They don't ever actually get it on record. They'll take care of the money. That they will. They'll take care of the house, the furniture, the cars, the boats, whatever. But they forget about following through with the death plan, the end of life choices. Only 1 in 3 adults have had an end of life conversation with the family. 1 in 3 adults. That just blows my mind. So, come to my classroom. Let's talk about it. Bring it all up. Bring every concern, every fear, every thought, every idea. It's all welcomed. Fewer than 20% have documented their wishes. That's really, really something bizarre. I update my plan every 3 years. Every 3 years. And I've been updating my plan since I was 30. So, most conversations happen after a crisis, and that's just the truth of the matter. There's no bones, there's no statistics, there's nothing else that can debate that. It is just a fact. When clarity is gone and when fear is running the show, it's disastrous. It's anxiety and panic, and it's chaos, and it's turmoil, and it's anything but peaceful. Anything but transitionally sacred. Anything that remotely resembles a ritual, a plan, anything. Avoidance is not protection. Avoidance is how. Sovereignty is truly lost. So I guess I should say that what does advocacy look like? Advocacy means this. It means choosing people who will honor your wishes. It goes back to the original question I started with. Who will stand behind you? Who will stand with you? Who will put do everything in their power to put your wishes above everyone else's, including their own. Advocacy means having the hard conversations early, now. Sitting in classrooms with people like me, reaching out to other doulas, reading on your own. This is what advocacy is. Hire someone like me or another death doula to be your advocate with your doctors, so that you have someone who is neutral, someone who is outside the circle. Ask your medical team, ask them direct questions. Don't beat around the bush. Get right to the matter. I promise you, when you ask your doctor straight up if they believe in medical aid in dying, and if that was a choice that I wanted to make, you'll know right off the bat whether you have a good doctor or not, just by their body language. Trust me. Naming your boundaries, that's so very important. You have to name your boundaries. Building a team that supports your sovereignty. Your death is not a community project. It's not a religious background or battleground, if you will. It's not a moral debate. It is your threshold, my loves. Your threshold. So once again, I leave you with the question. Who will stand beside you? Who will honor your sacred threshold? It's a tough question. And it begs a lot of attention. And it begs a lot of soul digging and inner work. And it begs a lot of conversations with people, hard conversations for most of us. But I promise, if you hang out here with me long enough, and if you really, really start to feel the vibe that I hope that I give off, the conversation should get a little easier. You could begin to set boundaries. Maybe even the tape will play through cool. So, I leave you with this. If we claim to care about dignity, autonomy, compassion, and sovereignty, then what are we actually doing to help people prepare for their deaths? Are we educating them enough? Are we empowering them enough? Are we listening? Are we honoring their cosmology? Are we protecting their choices? Not so far, we're not. But we're on the right path. It's starting, it really is starting to open up. Death is not failure. Death is not a punishment. Death is a rite of passage. Birth is a rite of passage. Death is a rite of passage. And every human being deserves the right to walk this passage in alignment with their own truth, with their own spirituality, with their own end-of-life choices, the dignity, the autonomy, the sovereignty. This is the threshold, my friends. This is the reckoning that we are coming up against. This is the work, the calling that I will help with. I want all of you to have the death that is amazingly powerful, possible for each and every one of us to have, if we could just get out of our own way. So thank you for sitting in this with me today with love, and it's been an honor just to be here and spend these 49 minutes with you. And I hoped it planted a seed. I hope you'll ask that question. I hope that it will linger in your mind. I hope that you will see things in a different perspective. And join me again. It was so much fun being here, and it was so much fun having you all hear what I feel and love about speaking about death and having these conversations. So much love. And talk about death. Start slowly. And the first way that you can do is to start thinking about building a team that's going to honor you. Blessed be, my friends. See you next time.